Hi folks, it's me Michaela and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be reading a nonfiction book for the first time. And if you've seen my bookshelf tour, you might be thinking, Michaela, that is a lie. You have read nonfiction before because you have Grit by Angela Duckworth on your shelf and you talk about how you keep it to remind yourself how much you hate it. And I'm not really counting that because I did not choose to read that. I had to read it for school. I don't count it as like reading a nonfiction book because I would not have read that if I was not forced to. I'm counting what I'm going to be studying today as my first nonfiction read. And even if you don't think that's true, it will be my first memoir because I'm going to be reading Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. I recently did my mid-year review for my 24 books in 2024 as well as my 2024 reading goals, and I realized that I had set a goal to read nonfiction this year and that Crying in H Mart was on my 24 books in 2024 list, and I had not achieved either of those two things yet, and it's now halfway through the year, so I put a hold on Libby and the hold came through much quicker than I was expecting it to. So I thought, you know what, let's just dive right into it. Let's just read some nonfiction right away and achieve this goal immediately after saying I haven't achieved it yet. You know, like prioritize that. Let's do it. We're going to read a memoir and it's going to be fun. This is just going to be like a short little one book reading vlog to just talk through my experience of reading a memoir nonfiction book for the first time and my thoughts on Crying in H Mart. There we go. Let's start reading and then I'll get back to you. Hello. It is now Saturday and I am about halfway through Crying in H Mart and I am really liking it so far. I kind of meant to give you an update on this before now, but I didn't. I just didn't feel like it. I did not feel like filming, so I didn't. Sue me. I'm here now. And I have to say, I think starting off my nonfiction journey with a memoir was a good call. It's still obviously very based in storytelling when it comes to memoirs, so it's kind of like the closest thing to fiction that you can get while reading nonfiction. And I think the thing about most memoirs is that they provide some kind of like insight learned through the person's experiences. I mean, if I'm wrong in thinking that, like, let me know. But I believe that's kind of like the purpose of a memoir is for someone's experiences to resonate and inform with others. So whether that is like reading a story that's very relatable to your own, or reading a story that is nothing like your own experiences to learn about the experiences of others. I think they're both like very important things to do. And these are things that obviously can also be in fiction writing. But I think when it is nonfiction and you're reading the story of someone's life in their own words as they tell it, that it's much more poignant. It hits a little bit harder knowing that it's not fiction. Crying in H Mart is Michelle Zauner sharing her life as an American Korean, and I'm noticing there's definitely like a theme of constantly feeling like you don't belong in either space. She's too Korean to be American. She's too American to be Korean. There's a lot of things that she feels like she's missing on both sides to try and fit in. And it's difficult to have her identity and to come to a balance with that. It also is very much about her very complicated relationship with her mother, and especially when her mother gets sick and ends up passing away. That's the kind of overarching thing that's happening. And a lot of her speaking about like belonging and identity in her Korean American self and life is also in relation to her mother, who is Korean. She talks a lot about how their relationship had so much connection through food, and there's a lot of talking about food, and that's how kind of the whole memoir begins with H Mart, which is a Asian food market chain. And so it's very interesting. I'm really liking it. I think her writing is done very beautifully. Her storytelling is very strong, and I think it really like gets her points out there while not being like, here is my point. You know, like I think it's just like her experiences and the way she describes them is enough for you to understand exactly like what she's saying. And obviously this is like not a story that I can really relate to. Like I haven't experienced a huge amount of loss in my life. I'm very lucky for that. And also I am very clearly just a white person in Canada. So I haven't had to struggle with the not feeling like you belong identity things that she's describing, but I find it very interesting to read that perspective, and I think it's important for people to read perspectives other than their own. I'm really liking it so far. It's very sad, it's very emotional, but not in a, I don't know, it's not like you're deep in a hole of darkness. There's definitely a lot of light in it and love to balance out kind of the sadness that is there, but it definitely like it's very like it's very emotional, and it's weird to say that you're enjoying that because this is like somebody's life. I also am not going to be rating this book because again it feels weird to just like rate somebody's life, so I will not be doing that, but I am really enjoying it. I understand why this was so popular when it released, you know, a few years back, and I can see why a lot of people would relate to it and have very strong emotions tying themselves to this story. I think it's a very powerful story so far, and I'm like really looking forward to reading the rest of it. I'm kind of expecting to finish this by tomorrow. I was actually planning to be further along in this book by today, but I really just spent this entire morning just like on and off napping. Don't know why, it just was like sleepy time. Waking up, sleepy time again. But that's fine. Sometimes you need a day that you do nothing. But yeah, that's my update. Really liking it so far. Think like storytelling based nonfiction is going to be where it's at for me, whether that's more memoirs. Is there like I feel like there must be other nonfiction that must tell like historical events, but in a less factual way. I feel like that has to be a thing, because I think that would be interesting to learn more about like historical events and timelines and situations, but without it feeling like you're reading a textbook. I want that kind of nonfiction and memoir nonfiction. I think that's going to be the nonfiction that I relate to the most. I really am not looking for like self-help stuff. I haven't read any of it, so I am kind of forming an opinion based off of just my outsider view of it. But self-help books in general just don't appeal to me, because I think a lot of them, I feel like the information that they give is kind of stuff that you already know or is just like repeated a lot. I feel like anything that's in a self-help book you could probably say in like 3 sentences and you'd understand the gist of it, but I could be 100% wrong, you know, because again I haven't read any. But yeah, that's my thoughts. Nonfiction reading going well so far. I think I picked a good one to start off with, and yeah, I'll see you when I'm further in the book or done the book. I don't know. It's a pretty short book, which is also nice. Not too long, easily digestible, because again it's like written so well, you just kind of like you just keep reading it, which is nice. But yeah, I'll be back. It's me. I'm back. I'm in my comfy, cozy Sunday attire, and I have finished reading Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner, and I really had such a wonderful time with this book. Wonderful's not the best word, I think, to describe it, considering I spent like a lot of the second half of the book just like tearing up, because she's just so well written and like raw and vulnerable with her emotions through her grief, and it was just so powerful, and it was just like such like a good book. I now get why like everybody was reading it back when, I don't know, just like yawning, so now I'm crying. My eyes are just very dramatic, like really my eyeballs need to calm down. But I understand why this was such like a big nonfiction book. I don't feel like there's many times where there's nonfiction that isn't just the autobiography or memoir of like an insanely famous person that gets this much attention as Crying in H Mart did back when it was really popular, like a few years ago. And I get it. I think that this is a book that everybody can find some kind of emotional connection to, because it's just like a very personal telling of an experience that I think everybody goes through at some point. And so it's either they've already experienced it and they relate to that, or they had felt something similar, or it's an experience that, you know, they dread to have, and to read somebody experiencing that can be very emotional and powerful for an individual. So I would highly recommend, but like, prepare to be moved. Bring yourself some little tissues in your little tissue box, maybe a travel pack. Don't recommend reading this on public transit or like in a public space unless you're just like really good at just being absolutely stone-faced or something while reading some like very sad, devastating things. But it was really good. I like obviously figured out at the end that Michelle Downer is a somewhat famous person. I've just never heard of her before, never heard of her music, but I kind of like that because I think it made it more realistic, and a lot of what she's writing about is not from the perspective of being famous. It's just from like a regular person living life, and I think that makes it much stronger and more powerful of a story because it's so much more readily relatable to the audience who's reading it. But yeah, I think for like the first time reading nonfiction, I had a much more, again, enjoyable, feels weird when reading books of these kind of topics, but I can't think of like a better word to use. How do I use a positive word to describe something that isn't positive, but it's not bad? You know what I mean? Like, what's the word to use for that purpose? But I think it went better than I was expecting it to. I read this book faster than I was expecting to as well. I was thinking that because it was nonfiction that I was going to be like bored. But again, I think that's because my previous like only other experience with nonfiction is being forced to read Angela Duckworth's book Grit, which I have mentioned before, but I despise that book. I really cannot stand that book. There's so many things in there I disagree with. And it's also written much more like textbooky. That's just not for me. And I think it kind of like clouded my judgment of what I thought nonfiction was. And I think that with nonfiction, it's the same as with fiction. Like, you just have to find the right stuff for you, and then it will be good. And then you'll have a good time, and then you'll enjoy the nonfiction that you're reading. So I think I should definitely read more nonfiction. If you have any nonfiction suggestions, let me know, because I'm very unfamiliar with the world of nonfiction. And so something similar to H Mart, I think something that's very based in storytelling, something that's written in a very captivating way, whether it's like a memoir or some kind of historical retelling, I think I'd be open to that. I don't necessarily want to read Britney Spears' memoir or like Spare by Harry, I don't know, the Prince. I don't even know. Does he have a last name? You know, like those like really big celebrity memoir books don't interest me. So not that kind of memoir or autobiography, but something a bit more like this. I think I would enjoy something like that. And if you have any suggestions of things that fit in that little box, let me know. I'd be open to trying them out and reading more nonfiction, really achieving my goal for myself better than just reading one in the entire year. But I will consider that goal read, because reading one nonfiction book is more nonfiction than I have ever normally read. So yeah, that's my short little reading vlog for my first nonfiction reading experience by choice, and I hope you liked it. If you did, make sure to give it a like, give it a little thumbs up, comment down below any of your thoughts. Did you read Crying in H Mart? Did you also cry? Let me know. And if you happen like me, consider subscribing. I'd be happy to have you. And with that, I hope you're having a wonderful day today, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.